bitten by too many of them, sleeping anymore. So all right then, it was time to move. You know, when things get that bad, you want to move as fast as you can. If it's possible, you want to move the very first day you see them.
Yeah.
But it wasn't possible to do it the very first day, but about 2 or 3 days later, I was gone. I as quickly I started getting things together real quickly, and I called a friend of mine to help me move. One of my friends to help me, and plus I rented a car because it took both of our cars. We wanted to move fast and just get out of there and break off from that place altogether. And part of the logistics of it, you wouldn't want to just move straight from there to the apartment you're going to if you got a lot of beds. So the idea was to stay in a motel for a while, for maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And then, because if you really apply for an apartment, oftentimes by the time they get it ready for you, you can't just move right in and then. Sometimes you have to wait a couple of weeks or maybe a month before it's ready. So the timing was right on this. I first moved, and we expected, this friend of mine that was helping me, we got everything out, books, for example, books that I wanted to keep, got them out on the table and looked behind the jackets in the books to be sure there were no bed bugs hiding in the books, because they would get in the books behind the paper jackets of some of the books. So you got to check things like that. And then shoes, if you've got several pair of shoes, they could even be in your shoes. Two places a lot of people don't think about looking in books or in their shoes, but yeah, they can get there too. We checked everything out, and then my shirts and there were some clothes, a lot of clothes I had to leave behind right off the bat. They had bed bugs in them already. I had to leave behind probably about 80% of all the clothes I had. They got infested with bed bugs. If I had taken them with me, they would have got in a motel room to begin with. So our idea was to get rid of everything that obviously had bed bugs to begin with. Just take a loss on it and leave them there in the apartment to begin with. No use taking them with you, or you'll just carry the bed bugs with you to your next apartment. And then, but by having this middle stopover place, this was like a clearinghouse. You get to the motel, it's to be expected you'll probably discover some more bed bugs and some of those things that you didn't see bed bugs in initially that were maybe hiding somewhere else, but that'll come to light while you're in the hotel. So then when I got into the hotel, I did another screening second time around to eliminate the clothes there that might still have bed bugs in them. So most of the ones I took to the motel actually were clear. They didn't have any bed bugs in them, but a few of them that I took there, I had to eliminate them too, because they had some bed bugs in them. But by then, I'd been through several transitions, but first the apartment and then that little stopover place, so that by the time Campbellstone was ready for me to move, I went over and interviewed with them, and the woman said that was right the first 2 or 3 days, and I was moved on about the third day and was in Campbellstone. I was given an interview to get in. The woman told me they'd have me in about 3 weeks, at least a month, or maybe 3 weeks. And sure enough, they were calling me 3 weeks later to move in. So by the time I moved into Campbellstone, they still checked everything out to be sure there was no bed bugs in all the stuff when I got there. I had to pass an inspection test when I got in there a day or two later, and I was free of bed bugs altogether then. But it took, because we did it a slow way, gradually, by going to a motel first and then to the apartment. That we got rid of all of them, and then everything's good now. But that's one of the biggest reasons I had to move from Campbellstone. Because the bed bugs came back with a vengeance. And another reason, the manager there was just really not the best manager in the world. She was kind of, I got some friends that still live there, and they don't like the way she managed. In fact, not too many people around there did like the way she managed the place. And even at Chester's church had a Bible study at another high-rise down Peachtree Road, about 5 miles from where we live. And there were people at that Bible study on Wednesday morning that had lived in these high-rises where this manager had previously managed. Her name was Clem. And they had stories to tell about her, they had lived where she had previously managed. Some of those people in his church, they lived in that same apartment she lived in. And they told stories, and they were true stories, no reason to doubt them, because they just fit in with the way she was doing. They were just in sync and tracked and morphed with all the things that she was presently doing over there. They had stories back 20 or 30 years ago, how they lived where in places she had managed, and said she'd pulled all kinds of crooked deals and, mismanaged and treated residents unfairly, pushed them around, took advantage of them, and didn't manage things right. If people needed repairs in their apartment, it took her forever to get to them. Stories like that going way back 2 or 3 decades. And some of my friends, I got a guy over there, he's a married guy, he married a woman from Greece. And when she first got here, she wasn't impressed. He didn't like the management too much himself, and she noticed the same thing. And we were talking just the other day, talking on the phone, and they were telling me how they had some problem, whatever it was. I think the refrigerator was on the blink or something like that, and they reported it, whatever it was. It seemed like it was a fridge that was on the blink, but whatever it was, they reported it back around Christmas, and they were just now getting to it. And we were talking on the phone just a week or two ago about it. So they didn't get to it until May. And what they're supposed to be getting to in December, they just finally got to it in May. That kind of stuff. So she's really an incompetent manager. And they were looking, they came out, I told them about how they all move out where I am. And they came and looked at it a while back, and they liked it a lot. They still got, they wanted to get one, but I think they wanted to get a 2-bedroom. And we're currently, right now, the 2 bedrooms, they come open, but they're harder. Sometimes you have to wait for one to come open.
It's hard to get shed those bed bugs. I mean, it takes a lot of poison and spraying and everything else.
Once you get them, it's a heck of a problem. It seems like it's almost impossible. I mean, there they were. If I hadn't moved in 2 stages, if I just moved straight from my apartment to this other apartment in Sandy Springs, I'd probably still have them there. I had to do it in 2 stages, go to the motel first, and first screen the ones there that are obviously full of bed bugs and leave them there in Brookhaven at Lennox Summit Apartments. But there's some of them that'll appear to be clean, that won't be. You get to the motel, you'll find more. But when I got to the motel, I found the rest of them that manifest themselves. Some of the others were hiding and you couldn't see them at first. But I moved to 2 stages. If I'd just gone in 1 stage, I'd have taken those bed bugs. They're that hard to get rid of. Absolutely that hard to get rid of. And there was a friend that had been giving me rides while, and taking going to church with and here and there. And even when I had bed bugs, he knew it, but he was taking a chance with me. And it didn't seem to get in his car much or anything. But somehow he got some. That one time I think he had some bed bugs before I ever got them, but then he thought he got rid of them. But anyhow, these bed bugs that showed up again, he didn't know whether they were part of the bugs that he originally had before I got mine, or whether they were mine, but one of the two, that just illustrates how hard they are to get rid of. He couldn't get rid of his, and he wanted to try some treatment that didn't involve heat. But I told him, if you don't get heated treatment, that's about the only thing that they say will get rid of them. You got to treat them with heat. There was some guy that claimed to have a non-heat treatment. He was doing something else, some kind of a chemical or a gel or something with good land. I'm going to tell you what happened to him. He was having that guy over to his place in September. About a month, I moved out of where I was October the 6th. I got enough of it and was out October. I wrote the management a note and I said, here's how the note read. I've had enough. I'm out of here. All these bed bugs and everything. And then the people here aren't going by the rules. They're smoking out in front. They're supposed to be not smoking in the front door or any walkway that leads into the apartment buildings. They're not obeying their rules. And also, this COVID that's out here now, that they won't be obeying the rules, or they'll be packing elevators full of people instead of just one or two at a time. And I just pointed out that this is just a COVID hotbed right here. I've had enough. Here are the keys. You've got my next month's deposit in advance. You keep that. I don't owe you the money. I'm paying you next month's deposit, and I'm out and going. Goodbye. Like that. It was abrupt, and just had to leave abruptly because of the bed bugs. But that was one big reason. But these other factors, just the sorry management in general, and not maintaining the rules, they got rules posted. The government sent out some flyers about smoking, that they're not supposed to smoke. They're from the government, and she had to post them all over the property, but nobody was paying any attention to them. They're just smoking everywhere around there. Not maintaining the law and order and the rules around there. And then they had that fellow I told you about that was attacking people over there, and that I had a run-in with him, and he was attacking ladies around there. And one lady, the police came, and she was bleeding where he had just attacked her one day, and there was a bunch of police cars outdoor, and I was just going over to Chester's apartment to see him. Ran into all that, and I heard that this woman got beat up by this guy downstairs. And they had that guy in the paddy wagon and took him off, but he was back that evening, and then they let him, he was there for another, finally, on January the 17th, all this was happening in late November, and then all through December, and they didn't come and pick him up till about January the 17th. And they picked him up, and he went to jail for a while somewhere, January the 17th, and I never saw him anymore until sometime in the summertime, around about July, I saw him. He got off the bus and came back. I was talking to somebody else out in front of Chester's apartment. He was walking down the hill. I saw him. He came, and he was just hanging his head low. He didn't say anything to us and went on in the building and went back upstairs. But I guess he still lived there then. But Chester told me a little while back, he ran and he was going through Chester's building, and he said hello to Chester, and then Chester asked him if he was still living there, and Chester said he told him he was living in some high-rise across the street. Is that right, Chet?
Yes, sir.
And the high-rise across the street is some really expensive high-rise that they had just built in the last year. It just had got built, and you couldn't even occupy it till just recently about that time. So, come to find out, if he told Chester the truth, he's in some expensive high-rise across the street. It's not even subsidized. It's not some expensive place that might be a retirement community. It's subsidized. It's expensive and independent and anything like that. You'd probably have to pay $2,000 a month or more for a place like that because it's not even subsidized. And
make good money to live there, wouldn't he?
Yeah, well, he didn't have good money. This guy himself kind of acted like he was a little bit retarded. But one thing, he didn't seem to have good sense. And also, he kind of limped around. He had a limp in the way he walked. He couldn't get around very fast. So, we looked on Steve. Steve's the guy that helped me move. One of my friends, Steve, he's a friend of Chester's, too. He goes to another church, and so he brought his car, and I brought my car to move my stuff in, but we had looked on the internet just out of curiosity. Sometime earlier, we got on the internet to see how many offenses that guy had had. So we got on the cell phone and looked him up, and his age and everything, we got the right guy. And things that you didn't have to pay to see, there was another section of things that you had to pay a certain amount to get in to see. But in things that we could see for free, he must have been in jail ever since he was a teenager in high school, 40 or 50 times in and out of jail. And for charges like robbery and attempted robbery and and assault and all that, seemed like 40 or 50 times, at least if not 40 or 50, 20 or 30, that's way too many, 20 or 30 times since you're a teenager in and out of jail, and they just slap him on the wrist and let him go. And then there's a whole bunch of others, probably an equal number, that you can pay to see. But why pay to see them? If he's already done 20 or 30 or 40 that you see off the bat, you know he's terrible. And so we figured out he must have his parents. He's got rich parents. Whatever they do, They may be a bunch of rappers, rap music, so something like that. Somebody's really independently rich. They just keep bailing them out all the time. And of course, the law doesn't care. They're not really, most of the law doesn't care. It's sorry. There's just a few people in law enforcement and that are judges that are righteous. Most of them are crooked. They get money out of that. They enjoy the more crimes he can commit, and they put him in jail, and he gets bailed out. They're getting rich off of that. They made a career, the law people have, of getting money from his parents, bailing him out. A revolving door. They like that. That's making them rich.
Yeah.
They don't want to stop it. They don't care how many people he attacks and assaults. But they get rich from all that. They love it. That's most of the law enforcement. A little bit that is right, a little bit the few that are right, well, there are few, but everything they do is offset by all these bad ones.
Yeah, it can get bad sometimes.
It gets really atrocious sometimes. Yeah, 10 or 20% of law enforcement might be what you call good or just or right, but it's 80 or 90 that's just as crooked as it could be, crooked and no good. 80 or 90% of it, and the 10 or 20% that are heroes, they're heroes. Every now and then you find some heroes, but the 10 or 20 can't offset all that the 80 or 90 bad ones do.
Do you ever hear from Pam?
Well, hardly ever, unless I could do the calling. I tried to find her. I was trying to find her a while back, and the phone's disconnected. So it's leaving me wondering. I've got to try to maybe run by sometime and see where they are, if they're still around. The last time I talked to her on the phone was right before I moved in to, where I am now in Sandy Springs. It's just before, about a month or two before I moved. So that goes back to around August or September of 2020. And I was looking to try to catch up with her. I got off into something else and got behind. But I always had to call. If I didn't call, there was no communication unless I called them. But I was looking for them just a few weeks ago, and all that I can find, the phone that they used to have is disconnected. And I thought, well, sometimes people take vacations or long vacations, and to keep from paying phone bills, they might just, they might disconnect it from the wall. And so, the way that automated message will sound, it'll just say that the person is no longer here, or they have a phone that's not been yet set up, even though it has been, but if it's disconnected, that's what the message will say. But sometimes they're just on a vacation. So I called back later after I figured they had time to get back from the vacation, but there's still no answer there. So I hope it didn't die of COVID. It has me wondering, did anybody there die of COVID, or did they get a divorce, or did somebody just die of natural causes, or what? Did they just get another phone? Maybe they just got.
She had a daughter lived out here in Marietta or somewhere, didn't she?
Well, Carrie, the daughter, Carrie. You remember Carrie, don't you?
Yeah.
And yes, she at one time. Carrie married several times. She was married to one guy, and I think she got divorced, and then married some other guy that lived somewhere up in Marietta. I think they lived somewhere close to, what is that street on Kennesaw Street that goes up by the hospital in Marietta, just kind of north of the square.
Yeah.
They lived somewhere, family was telling me she lived somewhere up around there. But I don't have their number.
Did Pam still live over here off South Cobb Drive?
Yeah, that's the last address, and that's where I was calling from. That her phone number used to be something like 774 34 3419 or 8419, something like that. But I looked, and both those numbers have been disconnected. So.
Well, most everybody that had a house phone, they've done away with it and got phones like this now.
Oh yeah, I know, but I was by then but some of them still had the same number. Sometimes they just put that same number on their cell phone. And I was talking to her presumably on their cell phone. And back in 2020, the last time I was talking to them around August or September, somewhere along in there, August or September of 2020. And so by then they would have had a cell phone. And long before that, I think they had cell phones long before that. Was disconnected unless they just got another number or moved to some other place and got another number. There's only two ways I know to find out. One would be to go to the courthouse and conduct a search. I guess you'd probably have to pay for a search like that, wouldn't you? But before,
I don't think you do.
of course, before going to that trouble, the first step to do would just be drive by their house and hope to just look up and go by the time that they maybe could see the car out there if they still got the same car, and then just go to the door and knock and see if they're still there.
Yeah.
And even though it might make them mad, although if you just go to find out if they're still there and tell them you didn't come, you just were curious about that, and you'll come back for a longer visit some other time. You just want to know if they're still on the planet.
Yeah, that you couldn't get them on the phone and you was worried about them or something like that. That shouldn't make them mad.
That shouldn't. Some people can be funny.
Yeah.
She did have a cleaning business, for a while. She used to clean, I think it was just residences. I don't think it was industrial cleaning too. And some people might, do a combination of industrial and residential.
Yeah.
Seemed like she was just doing residential only. But whatever, that's kind of immaterial one way or another, whatever it was. The cleaning business, apparently that was, we looked on the phone, and it mentioned that, but the cleaning business number was the same as the house number.
Yeah. Well, it looks like she'd want to keep in touch with you because you're the only family she's got left besides her kids.
Well, I tell you, she doesn't communicate much. One time when I was doing music for your church, they wanted somebody to play, and I was doing music for that. You put me into that job for a while doing music. It was a church you had been at, and you were at another one, but you told me about they needed a piano player. You remember that?
Yeah.
And so
What was the name of that one?
this was during the time I was doing music for them, and so one evening, I think it was in the evening. I was doing it in the morning and the evening for a while. So one evening, let me see how this went. Elizabeth and Johnny, I'm trying to remember. I think
Elizabeth and her husband both are dead.
Yeah, they did. But this was before they were dead. This was when they were still living. It was one of those 2002 or 2004. So Uncle Hoyt died first and Aunt Mary died second. I'm trying to recall, it was one of those, either that or Elizabeth, when they died, Johnny died first and Elizabeth died last.
Yeah.
Well, I think this was about the time Mary died. I believe that was when Hoyt had already died earlier. And this was more at the time frame. This was like 2002 to 2004. Hoyt died in 2002.
Yeah.
And this was 2003 when Mary died. So I think the reason I stopped by, but the bottom line, it was just to find out some details about the funeral. I didn't have all the details. And I think I couldn't get hold of Elizabeth either when Mary would be buried or something like that. It had something to do with that. And so I just stopped by. I didn't mean to stay long, but since that church, was just up the road, Pamela, they're just down the road from the church a couple of miles back down South Cobb Drive. So rather than calling them on the phone, I just stopped by just to get some details about the funeral. something like that. That's what it's about. And then I'd be on my way. They had a duck fit about that. Just a pure outright outrageous duck fit. And some guy was, there's some neighborhood, kind of looked like a teenage kid, or just barely past teenage years that were there. And I said, well, all I came to do this time was just to get the details about the funeral. I don't have to stay longer. We could do that some other time. Just give me the rundown on that. They stood there and had a duck fit and just went over and over again for about 30 minutes for what could have been done. They could have just given me the answers to those questions in about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'd have been on my way. But they would rather waste 30 minutes being contrary as the devil, having a duck fit, than to take 2 or 3 minutes to answer the question. And goodbye, I'll come another time, but if you want me to come, I have to add that to it. That's the way they are. It's ridiculous, outrageous. Take on 30 minutes and have a big duck fit and go into a rage over something that could have been conducted in 2 or 3 minutes.
What church was that?
This was not a church. This was my beloved sister.
I was saying, what church was it that you were talking about at first?
Oh, I was just doing music for a Baptist church up there in the mornings and the evening, doing music for them. And on the way back home, instead of trying to call them on the phone, back then, I don't think I had a cell phone at the time. That was maybe just a little bitty. I don't even think I had the basic cell phone then, because this goes back some time. It was just easier to stop by and ask them than it was to fool with that, and just for a minute.
And that church no longer around, is it?
Well, it probably is. It probably is. I'm just not doing music there anymore, because that was 20-something years ago now.
What was the name of it?
It was a Baptist church. What was the name of it, Ed Catherine? There were 2 or 3 of them like that. It was something similar to hers. It was.
Where was it?
Well, that one that you used to go to before
Our
you.
church, Victory Baptist Church.
Victory, right before that.
No, that's the only one we've ever been to here in Cobb County.
But well, you went to some other ones right before that, didn't you?
No,
It's not the one you're at now. This was another one. Y'all used to
that's the only one. We built that church. And that's the one that we've always went to.
You didn't visit at some other church for a while?
No.
Because you gave me a tip about a church that needed a musician.
That's the only church we went to in Cobb County. We went to Yorkville before we moved to Atlanta. We went to Yorkville Baptist Church, up there where your daddy is buried. But when we moved to Cobb County, we moved to Atlanta, and then we moved back to Cobb County, and that's the church we built. And we've been going there ever since we built the church.
There was a preacher at it that he was some mechanic that had a car repair shop up in Dallas, but he had a church down here. And,
I don't remember that.
and you gave me a tip about him needing somebody to do the music for the church. You must have been, if you weren't a member of it, you must have visited it one time, because that's how I learned about the church opening. And he had a wife and a daughter, a little young kid, daughter, a few years, maybe 6 or 7 years old, or 10 years old, something like that. Not even a teenager. And he had a business. This is a small church, so he couldn't make it. He didn't have a church salary much. He had to have this car repair shop up in it was up in Dallas, some kind of car repair shop outside of Dallas. In Dallas, it was still in Dallas city limits. On the way out of Dallas, when you got on Highway 78, and you leave and go by that, there's a hospital. There used to be Dr. Sparta, a hospital there. They built a bigger hospital. You had to go under a railroad bridge. And then there's a bigger hospital on the left. They built a bigger Dallas hospital later on. About the time Grandmother Brown died, they had a bigger one. And so from what he said, his car repair shop was somewhere on the highway there, about along in there, where those hospitals are. He had a car repair shop, some kind of automobile repair. That was his livelihood. So I forgot his name. I used to know his name. I used to remember all these names by heart, but that's been so long ago. I'd think of it in a minute, but I've done a lot of those little jobs like that, you know, a number of them. So the name, I'd think of it in a minute, but it was some church nearby, not far from here. But that's how I found out about it. It was 2002. 2002.
21 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while now, hasn't it?
You know, we built that church where we go, it was in 64,
68.
1968, when we built that church. Church hit 55 years ago. We built that church.
It's been a while now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like it's been that long.
A long time.
In a way it does. In one dimension, it seems like a long time. It's like another dimension where it seems like it was just the other day. You know, in some ways it's a long, long time ago. In some other ways, vivid memories of a lot of things that happened that were just like the other day.
Where's that church at y'all going to?
The one that's there, that's on Macklin Road. Just
Church of God.
Church of Christ. Yeah, the Church of God, you know, the Church of God is kind of like a Pentecostal church.
Yeah,
But
sure.
where
I've been trying to think where that Church of Christ is at, and I can't figure it out.
It's right off Macklin Road. There's a little side street you turn
Oh,
on.
you have to turn off Macklin Road too.
Yeah, but it's just a short.
Oh, okay.
But the address, isn't the address though? Well, they didn't go to sleep. Look at
He's
that.
sleeping.
Yeah, that's
Is the address of that Church of Christ Macklin Road is its actual address? Because you have to this little
that's Macklin Road.
even though there's a little side street to it. Yes, Macklin Road. 30. What's the street number? Oh, you remember the street number?
Well, that's for the church.
Yeah.
That's what that is. For the church. Is it 50 something?
Let's put it like this. You know where Powder Springs Road and Macklin Road goes off Powder Springs?
Yeah.
You know where that is, a junction.
Yeah.
Like when we used to go to Braswell or Yorkville, and you could either go the Blacktop Highway in Marietta, or you could go out Powder Springs Road and then turn on Macklin Road. It's just a short distance from where Macklin Road turns off of Powder Springs Road. There's some church on the corner there. That's a Baptist church on the corner. Whatever the name of that Baptist church. You've probably seen a Baptist church on that corner.
On the left going the other way.
Well, if you were coming from downtown Marietta, let's say, from going to Braswell, you're in Marietta and you didn't want to go the Blacktop Highway, and you came out Powder Springs Road, this church, you get right to the where Macklin Road takes off to the right from Powder Springs Road, and there's a church off to the right, kind of sits
Up
up
on that hill.
It sits up on a little hill. It's not a big,
Yeah.
real high hill, but a little kind of a small hill from the highway. Yeah, whatever, some kind of Baptist church. Seemed like Hobie Lister used to be a member.
Yeah, he used to pastor that church
Oh, he
years
listed.
and years ago.
And he was a gospel musician. He was in a gospel quartet. And yeah, so that's where it is. It's not far. Their church is just down the road, just a piece about Macklin Road. You just go a little ways down Macklin Road, and there it is.
I'll have to start watching for it and see.
You may not, if you're going fast, you might miss it because there's a little side street, little side driveway that you have to take, but that's where it is.
It's on the right side
Yeah.
going the
Yeah,
other
if you were
way.
going, if you were going toward Dallas, you had to be on the right side.
Look for it next time I go up through there. I don't drive too much more since I got old. I don't like to get out in a lot of traffic.
You don't drive at all, even in the daytime? Tina does the driving for you now?
No, Tina don't drive.
How do you get there, Joyce? Or you still drive a little?
Yeah, I
You're just
still
saying you don't
drive.
like to drive, but you still drive some.
Yeah, I still drive, but I don't like to get out in a lot of traffic. I like to go during the day when everybody's working instead of up on the highway.
If you can find a time like that in the morning down there, some roads now, it's getting to where now, especially getting down around Atlanta, it looks like that it used to be you could tell the difference in the weekends and the weekdays and Sundays, and now it's getting to where, except for early Sunday morning, if you're out early Sunday morning around Sunday school time at 9 or 10 o'clock and church time at 11, traffic is not much.
Yeah.
By the time you get to Sunday afternoon,
No,
you can't tell. Sunday afternoon looks like rush hour. Oh,
Yeah,
Monday
yeah.
looks like Monday. You can't tell the difference between Monday through Friday and Sunday when you get past 12 o'clock. When the churches let out past maybe 12 or 1. Let's say from 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday afternoon. It's just like rush hour on Wednesday afternoon in Atlanta. And shoot, I guess it probably is here in Marietta, just about nearly that bad.
Yeah, everybody gets out and goes to eat after lunch. Makes a lot of traffic.
Yes, it's getting to where rush hour is every hour of the day now.
Yeah, just about it.
In some areas it is. Maybe there might be a few areas here and there that are exempt from it, not as bad, but in some areas, you take where I am down the Roswell Road and 285 and Sandy Springs, there's, except for Sunday morning, in between about 8 o'clock and 1 o'clock, there's not much traffic out then, but after that, it's just like midweek. When you get out of church on Sunday afternoon and go to eat somewhere with friends, and you go out to the church time at 12, you go out and have a long lunchtime and eat and fellowship a lot, and you come back at 2, and you have to get on the freeway to go home. No, terrible. You'll be in a big jam. It'll take you an hour to go what would take you ordinarily 15 minutes.
Yeah, when we lived over yonder on Austell Road, there was not a whole lot of traffic, but then they 4-laned it, and oh my Lord, there was a lot of traffic over there now.
Yeah, I remember when y'all first, just back up, let's go back some in time here. Y'all lived, first of all, before you moved to McCaslin Street, you were over on Tumlin Street.
Yeah.
Right up at 14th, it was in a house either on the corner or next to the one on the corner of the intersection of Tumlin and 14th Street. And if you went from our house to your house, we'd have to go nearly to 14th, but you stopped a little short of it. There's a house on the corner of 14th and Tumlin, or right behind the one that was on the corner. I forget which, but it was. But anyhow, and we had to go up the back steps. We went up the back door steps to
We
get to.
lived in a duplex.
Mm-hmm. And y'all were there. I remember in 1953 and 54. I was in the fifth grade in 53, 54. But sometime when I was in the sixth grade, sometime in 54, you moved over. It was maybe the fall of 54. The summer or the fall or sometime, because when I was in the sixth grade, I remember y'all were on McCaslin Street then. And by the time I was in the sixth grade, and I think it was before, it was like early on. It wasn't spring. It was more like winter and maybe even autumn, the fall of 60 or 54. Y'all were on Tumlin Street then. I mean, McCaslin. You moved from Tumlin to McCaslin.
What was Atlanta like back then?
Well, y'all moved to McCaslin Street. So one time McCaslin Street was a rocky road, not all the way. Where we lived, it was paved. But when you got further down to Ethel Street, remember Ethel Street? Then it was a rocky road between them and 14th Street for a long time, but then they paved it. But I think by the time y'all moved down there, it was paved. I don't think it was. And then let's see, you were down there. I remember when I was in the 12th grade, y'all were already on Austell Road.
Yeah. We didn't live very long in Atlanta. We didn't live but 4 years in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So we moved back up here.
That's about the time Daddy traded and bought that 57 Ford. And he bought that when I was in the 12th grade. He bought it before, it was before Christmas. It was, got that car, I guess, sometime in maybe October or November of 57. One time we came to visit y'all after we got that car. I guess by then it was 60. That was 60 and 61. So I remember 61. I was in the 12th grade in 60 and 61. We came to see y'all, visit y'all sometime in 61 in that 57 Ford. I remember that. Plus, I think you lived there. You were up there not just in 60, 61. You moved up there about 59, didn't you? Or 50. You were.
No, we moved up here in 54, 56. When we moved up here to Cobb County. We didn't live but 4 years in Atlanta.
55 and 56. 7th. Let's see. 56, I was in the 7th grade. I remember the 7th grade, I graduated from the 7th grade at the end of, it was 56 the summer. And we were, before the 56 at the end of the summer, the school patrol. We were like, if you were a high school patrol, you get to go to Washington, D.C. I remember a guy came, I'm trying to remember if he took me. He came and picked when I got back. Mother and Uncle Guy came to pick me up at the train station when we got back from Washington, D.C. That's when I was in the 7th grade. That was sometime in May of 56. So, but then by then, y'all were living up in Cobb County then? Maybe you were. I was thinking y'all were still down closer by. But anyhow, I remember a guy coming to pick me up because Daddy was working or something. He wasn't able to pick me up. Usually on Sundays he would have been able, but for that reason, for some, he wasn't able to get me. And the guy came and picked me up, Guy and Mother. And he might have even taken me down to the station before on Thursday when we left to go. I don't remember for sure if he took me down there, Guy and Mother, or whether they just picked me up coming back. But I remember him picking me up.
So what made y'all move up here?
What? Well, and if y'all were up here in 56, which, were you already in that house that you just moved out of before you moved here?
Yeah, we just lived in that house and then we bought this one over here.
I mean, you moved to that house on Austell Road in 56.
Yeah. We moved in here 2002.
You remember what part of 56 you moved in? What?
I don't remember. It seemed like it was in April that we moved up here. I'm not sure. Can't remember. I think it was in March or April that we moved over there. Anyway, both of us worked in Atlanta, but we went back and forth. It wasn't